Yes. And Wayne was on the road. I think he missed it, but his brother was there. But yeah, he's been quite close to the whole thing. It's good.
Well, Carey, I've got you on. I've just started to record now, and I'm going to capitalize on you being here with Tom. And you know what it's like to win because you've done it. And now here you got to watch your son win in your dad's arena. Um, I just want you to describe that feeling and the experience for me and anybody else who's listening.
Well, I'll tell you, I was sitting there watching I guess the final seconds pound down. Well, first of all, it was, as you walk up to the rink and it's, my dad's name on it and stuff. After all the years, Wally, and it goes a long ways back, starting into, the peewees and the bantams and the midgets and, the amount of successes in that rink. Just too many to count.
Yeah.
But, he scored the first goal of the game. And
that's your son, Riley. Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Riley scored the first goal. And, there was probably, I don't know, 75 people, relatives, and it's like everyone kind of looked up into the sky as if Grandpa was watching down on him.
Yeah.
But then he played an outstanding game. The team played outstanding, they swept the team that was in first place.
Yeah.
And so from the goaltending to the team defense to, the offense, they found a way to win 4 straight.
And you mentioned to me their leading scorer was injured and he didn't play and you still won.
Yeah, that was kind of, where the depth kind of shone through. I think the team really had more depth and had played it, throughout the series. And, probably a good lesson for, anybody in the game of hockey. You get into a short series and, you need 3-4 lines going. And it gives some of the better players, the more talented players, a little bit more energy and to go do what they can do.
Carey, when you talked about, like I talk about 4-line hockey and short shifts, and you talk about your team finally in this series went to 3-line hockey. And most of the teams today appear to be 2-line hockey teams. And I think in AAA Midget, when Riley was playing, it might have been 1-line hockey. Can you talk about the managing of the bench and that concept and how it doesn't get results if you go to 1-line hockey and 2-line hockey you might, but 3-line hockey you will be more successful. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Over the years, I think that I've been involved in hockey, and I'm a big component of, creating a team, and teams will overcome other teams, and having everybody feel a part is vital. But I am a big 4-line component, and I really believe that the 45 to 50-second shift of high energy, for 60 minutes, can outdo teams that do the 2-line hockey. There was a movement 30 years ago, where the 2-line hockey club just was running everything, and I thought there was a good movement towards more 4-line hockey, and I just keep on watching it. And, at every level, the teams that seem to be winning today are teams that create a team where everybody's needed and everyone chips in, plays hard, and it's dropping it down to 2 lines, and and I understand power play 1, power play 2, and penalty kill 1, penalty kill 2, and all that. But I think 5-on-5 hockey and everybody can penalty kill. That's with the way kids' skills are today. Getting kids on the ice and feeling a part of it is as important is teaching a breakout.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it just keeps hitting me right in the forehead,
Yeah.
and I see so much of this, two-line hockey now, and the disappointment for young athletes to work as hard as they have to work, and then show up, when it's the time to play, and they get to watch. And I think, that's something that I think we just got to get better at.
Well, the NHL playoffs and the teams that win, they play 4-line hockey.
Yep. Well, they have to.
Yep. And all year in the NHL, they can play 2-line hockey, and those third and fourth lines get, their shifts 5-on-5 once in a while, and maybe a few of them are on penalty kill, but I think that you can't measure the effect of the emotions and the energy of all of the players in that environment, and the fatigue at a level like that the Canucks are playing. There's no TV timeouts for extra breaks and breathing, recovery. So in minor hockey, there's the physiology of shift length, recovery time. It's a no-brainer, but it's forgotten about by many, many coaches, just trying to get the result and using the best player, most talented player, and not having the best team. So I'm glad you got to speak to that. And we've got Hal Terse has just joined us from Minnesota. Hi, Hal. Is your speaker going?
How you doing, Hal?
My speakers are here. Good morning, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got Carey Bracko on speakerphone, Hal.
Great.
Hal works in Minnesota, but he scouts for a team in the BCHL. He's one of those guys finding American players to go up there. But Hal's like me, and he's written materials back in the day for USA Hockey, but he and Tom and I are the same mold in terms of we come from that old school teaching progressions and teaching skating and fundamentals and growing up. But hell, Carey Bracko's on. I coach him in minor hockey as a bantam, and we won the city championship and the provincial championship that year.
Nice.
And I coach him in junior A, and we won the provincial championship that year. And his dad has an arena named after him in town, and his son played in the final game of AJHL playoff, and they won the championships last night. Of course, 5 of the teams have gone to your league, but they won the championship in the Ken Bracko Arena, and Raleigh got the first goal of the game. He's the son of Carey, and Carey's on today talking about it. And what we're talking about, Hal, and Tom, you might chime in on this. In Minnesota, and Tom in the girls hockey Calgary, is there one-line hockey, like where they double shift the best players and play all the power play and penalty kill, or 2-line hockey, or is it 3 or 4? What is it now?
The team that won the Alberta League, the Edmonton team, their top scorer got almost 3 points a game, and they play 30 minutes a game. An ex-Oiler coaches.
What about you, Hal? What's your experience?
Well, we play all our kids. And in our last 2 games of the season, both against teams that we had beaten during the season, the other teams played about a line and a half.
Yeah.
And the games aren't, the games are only an hour. This is Pee-wees or, whatever that is. U14, 13, I don't know how old the kids are.
U13, I think.
13-year-olds. And, the games aren't very long, so you can get away with doing that, I guess. That's when, the winning at all costs becomes, pretty prevalent late in the season. I don't know. I mean, I think a good coach can manage his bench properly to make sure everybody gets ice time all the way through. But when the other team, when your third line's going out against their first line every time, it makes it a little challenging. We were competitive, but we didn't win the games. But, the season's over. Nobody got hurt. And everybody got to play. I mean, I don't know. That's just, I have, over the years, Wally and Tom, I have, when I coached in the Edina program, a couple other programs around town, we won state tournaments or regional tournaments with third liners scoring the winning goals. And if they're sitting on the bench, we maybe don't win those games. So I don't know. Everybody's got a different approach to it. So if winning matters more than everything else, then I guess that's the way to do it. But I like all the kids to have an equal opportunity to learn and develop during the year, experience tough situations, and see what happens. So,
Tom, can you comment?
Well, first of all, why would you want to come to practice if you're never going to get on and play in the games? That's one of my philosophy.
Oh.
And it's youth hockey. The idea is that everybody improves. And like this year, probably the last girl we chose because she could score and handle a puck, but wasn't a very great skater. We worked on skating so much, she was basically our best player the last 10 games. And her skating was really good. And, why would she come to practice for 6 months if she's sitting the bench all the time? So That's my philosophy.
Rick Puttick, are you on, Rick? Can you hear us?
I can, Wally.
Okay, Rick, we've got Carey. Are you still on, Carey Bracko?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm still on. Yeah.
Carey, we've got these great midget coaches who have both won. Rick and Rick is coaching full time in Vulcan. It's a junior A program out there. They're getting kids that are on the cusp of making your junior A league or the BC Junior League. He's doing it full time now, and he's our age, Hal. He's been there, done that, up the ladder, and familiar with the coach education program and that. And Rick, we've been talking about bench management because Carey's team won the Alberta Junior Hockey League last night. It's not his team.
Were you there, Rick?
No, Rick lives in Vulcan.
I wasn't there, Carey.
No. Jordan was at the game last night. I don't know if he got to see you, but he talked to your daughter. And
yeah, I seen him from afar. There was an awful lot of alumni and a lot of people at the rink, so kind of lined up talking to everybody.
Yeah. Anyway, Rick, Carey brought up the point that at the end of the year here in this playoff, their best player isn't able to play. He broke his hand or something, and they played 3-line hockey. They used everybody. I'm sure they had a 4th line, but they got spotted and they played, recovery minutes for the other lines. But most teams are playing 2-line hockey. And I'm curious about your philosophy coaching midget and now coaching junior. How do you manage the bench in terms of using all your players, getting the most out of them, and trying to get the best result? Rick?
Pretty much the same way I always have, Wally.
Can you elaborate that for Carey and the listeners?
Yeah, essentially, I roll my lines. I have my line structure where I have top tier players playing together. And tearing down the line, everybody rolls off the line at the start of the game. Whether it's PK or a PP situation, the next line up gets to start. Towards the end of the game, depending on where we are situationally, we may make adjustments to that. If we're in a comfortable position, we just continue with that process. If we're in a situation where we need something to happen, one way or the other, tight game situation, We may make adjustments. Players are informed beforehand that this will be the structure. Starts right at day one and first day of camp. We're going to operate in this fashion. My philosophy is that if people don't play in situations, they don't know for themselves whether they can play. They don't have any feel for it, any confidence. And as a coaching staff, you don't know either. So you have to put them in there. You have to give them an opportunity to prove themselves, rightly or wrongly. And if they're proven to be efficient at it, that's great. You work with them to get better. And if they're proven not to be, you do likewise. You work with them and help them to get better. And you put them back in at first opportunity to see if they've actually learned anything and have they developed that confidence and that feel for it. A lot of it is just having done it, knowing that I can do it. I'm not too concerned about it moving forward. I've got the capability, and to me, that's confidence.
Yeah, I've watched Rick's teams a lot over the years, and he lives and dies by that philosophy, and it's the way it should be. One of the unfortunate things I'm starting to see too much of, Wally, is these kids and these athletes and these people are playing hockey. I mean, it's a lot of energy, a lot of time, and then to go to the rink and and be a second, third class citizen on the airplane, it's not that much fun. And it's one of the big concerns I have for junior hockey in BC, Alberta, across the nations, and I'd be interested to know how, from what you see down in the States, like, because I know the NCAA and the universities are all around there, but and I'm sorry to go off this topic here, Wally, but we're starting to see 28-man rosters and 25-man rosters, and I watch and listen to the junior people, and and they have way more kids than what's necessary on a team.
Yep.
And that amount of not playing, I just find it mentally not good for kids. How is it being handled in the U.S., Hal?
The U.S.?
Yeah, like
some
the
of these
programs down there, do they have 25 and 28-man rosters?
Well, they have 20-man rosters, but they got 30 kids in the locker room, and some of the teams do. The BCHL is only going to run about 23 or 24 kids. North American Hockey League, some of those teams go through 35 players during the course of the year, and some of them don't. There's 3 to 5 new teams every year because the entry fee is $1.2 million to open up a business where you can lose $150,000 or $250,000 a year. And I've got a couple of the kids I advise, or their parents are asking me about this new team in Watertown, South Dakota, which is a new franchise for the North American Hockey League. And they have not announced any coaching. They haven't announced any staff or anything at this point. And the boys that I've advised are going out to Utah to play and a couple of different teams out there in the NCDC. There's a lot of competition for players, but then they hoard them too. So I don't know. And Minnesota kids are reluctant to travel very far from home. Whereas most kids in this country have already traveled a long ways from home during minor hockey. Kids from California end up in Michigan playing for Little Caesars and that kind of stuff. Or they go to Shattuck, or they go to places like that. Minnesota kids don't do that very much. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge for us to get Minnesota kids up in the BCHL, because it's a long ways from home, and it's hard for their parents to watch the games in person. So
Well, it's with mixed emotions because I mean, there's two different philosophies in a lot of this stuff. And, watching the 5 teams get up and and leave Alberta. After a 60-year history, and most of those teams are, when they operate, they over recruit, and you got to watch, and now you got to be careful too because the junior guys they just don't they can't in their minds function with 4-line units or 3-line units or the kids don't get to play. And when you got 28-man rosters, it's tough to you just can't keep everybody happy. And it's not a question of keeping everybody happy. It's just that when you don't get to play, what's the real reason? It's just not healthy, in my opinion.
Yep. I agree.
Well, Hal, I don't know if you or the listeners know, but Carey was a general manager in the Western Hockey League with the Calgary Hitmen at one time. And so he's been experienced at that, Carey. And actually, you managed to turn the franchise into a pretty successful one. And that's because of your business acumen, but also your sports acumen and knowing how to manage people and get people to form together. I mean, it is about leadership. And when you got involved in that Western Hockey League team and, changed the culture and made it very successful, what were the numbers in that day and age?
In the Western Hockey League, in talking with my coaches at that time, because a lot of times they want, to bring in the 16-year-old to kind of make sure that that league doesn't lose them to the NCAA per se, Wally, right?
Yeah.
But it was 23 is what we ran with, and and at times when you're playing 72 games, it's not enough. So the junior guys will always say that there's injuries and they need X amount of players, and so we kept 23, and I don't know, I just got a soft spot. It just burns my soul when kids come to a rink and they don't play. And if you add the numbers up, so the Hitmen had quite a bit of success. And that's actually something else we'll chat a little bit about just quickly before I forget. So we had 23 there. The AJ is 25 now, and the BC will be 28. Hal, just before because the junior guys just can't help themselves, eh? And there are people, I guess, prepared, even though you tell them they're not going to get to play. Like a team like the Brooks Bandits or the Penticton V's. I mean, it's kind of it's horrible to watch the amount of guys who don't play. But they have such a leader, and they have a model that gets the best of the best, and so that's kudos to them in some ways, but kudos to them in watching the aftermath of a kid sitting there for 40 games and not touching the ice. That sort of stuff shouldn't be happening. But one of the interesting things about last night, and I think the coach of the Calgary Canucks was the best player on the Hitmen when I was the GM, Brad Moran, and he was coaching the Canucks last night. And his the defense, and so having success with the Hitmen, I think we went to the Western Final, and he was a major part of it. And the assistant coach of the Canucks last night, Matt Robinson. So we were sitting around after, and of course Matt played on the 2003 team that we won the Air Canada Cup with.
That's the national U18 championship, Hal.
So I'm sitting there after, and you got Brad Moran, who's got his shirt in the rafters of the Saddle Dome, and Matt Robinson, a five-time KHL, All-Star, but both of them came from, programs, the North Stars, and Brad's case was Abbotsford, but it was quite a treat for me to be sitting there with two former people that I was involved in either coaching or managing, and they're now coaching and managing and doing a pretty good job.
Well, I've always said you look at the people that coach today and you look at who coach them and you know who they are. We know those people. So good coaches breed good leaders, and they breed, develop good players to become good leaders and become good coaches. So it's sort of the way the wheel turns up here.
I've got something to add too, Wally.
Okay.
Well, because I was 23 different college teams, and for a player to play, they have to be a full-time student. So we basically carried 25, because if there's injuries or whatever, you need those players. And my most success was I would dress the 20 players that were the best that week at practice. So that created a little bit of internal competition. And you absolutely have to have extra players. And I know the state women's team this year, 6 girls flunked out at Christmas. They ended up with 14 skaters down the stretch. So of course, one of the things you have to do is monitor their, that sort of thing. But at college, you basically have to have more than 20 players.
Carey, you've talked to me about not in the Canucks organization and all those junior A organizations. It's a full-time job for the player today.
Yes.
Can you talk about the degree of commitment the players have to in terms of their time and dedication to do everything? We didn't do that back in your day of junior A. But can you talk about the change in culture and the way the sport's gone?
It's got some good parts to it, and it's got some parts that I'm a little bit concerned about, to be honest with you. You don't have a job and play junior hockey anymore, and it's tough to go to school because of early mornings, working out. It's a 6 to 8 hour day in preparation to play junior hockey, which ultimately, I guess, preparing to spend 4 years in school somewhere playing. But it has become an interesting way that and that's one of the reasons why when you put that much time and energy into it it's almost like a full-time job, and then you don't get to play. You can really see kids tailing off, and even guys that are playing. And I'm probably a little bit more, which is challenging, and everybody knows the 365 day a year, commitment that kids and parents and have to make to be successful. Now, I guess how much is enough? Should there be that much that it takes to be successful? I don't know. Mentally, I think you got a lot of tired people, an awful lot. And I think one of the reasons there's a lot of injuries is because the game's faster, more competitive. But I also think there's a lot more tired people playing the game and mentally not as sharp because they're on the ice or training, basically 365 days a year. There's got to be some sort of balance. And I'm sure the good programs find a little better balance, but it's a lot to ask.
Rick, I got a question for you. Out there in Vulcan in your league, you're recruiting players from everywhere. In fact, you might be interested in, the Canucks not keeping a player and a player still wants to play at that level, and your team might be a model that he could play there and get to the next level. But how do you manage their time during the full day? Are their kids working? Are they going to school? They're doing extra stuff in your league there. Can you talk on that?
Well, we had players in both categories. A couple that had part-time jobs, and a couple that were going to school physically in the community, and others that were online learning. But our normal week would run. We had I practice on ice practice Monday through Thursday, unless we were traveling. Games were Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They had a dry land session most afternoons after the skate. So yeah, as Carey suggested, it becomes a bit of a full-time situation, and ours isn't quite as intense as say the AJ or definitely the Dub would be. Ours is a program that we're trying to, as you suggested, if a Canucks had a player that they couldn't keep, and needed a place for him to grow and develop, we'd like to be that place. And it's prepping them for what's coming, for what they aspire to be and to do long term. It's a proving ground. It's a training ground. It's a ground where an environment where they get accustomed to that kind of a regimen, that kind of a commitment.
Well, Carey, I hope you can connect with the organization, and Brad in particular, with those kinds of players, and send them Rick's way to help him with his roster. But the way he coaches and develops players, they're going to be better players if they come back to you. So I'm glad you got to talk on that, Rick. Tom, I'm going back to the minor elite hockey, and you had a U15 team last year, U13 the year before. What about their day-to-day routine? How demanding is it for them? The dry land you did, and some of them are playing school sports at the same time. You got anything to comment on there? Is it too much? Are they pretty balanced? Or
well, they do. We practice twice a week. There is one dry land and usually 2 games. So they're going 6 days a week. I get her. What's that? 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And tell you the truth, I would have liked to have one more practice. I guess the AAA's go 3 practices a week, but it is pretty demanding. And what is really demanding is we practice at 4 o'clock on Thursdays usually. So the parents got to get. None of these kids can drive, and midget is different. Kids can drive each other. In the U18. So the parents basically they have to really work together to pool and pick up kids or leave work early. And I was really impressed because basically we had 100% people at practice, except for a good reason, and they had to really scramble to do that. So it's a huge commitment for sure.
Tom, the very first year you coached, and they introduced an extra U13 girls elite team. And it's sort of a wake-up call for those young players that play in community. And I wonder if you could describe your frustration and how you dealt with it, because you never experienced before the lack of commitment of the community players wanting to play elite.
Well, when we started, the parents it's the parents really, because the parents, those kids can't go anywhere. And we practiced all over the city. And this is one of the biggest land area cities in the world. We go 25 kilometers south or 25 kilometers north to different arenas. And the first part of the year, we were 50-50 because we were always having 3-4 players miss every practice. And I finally talked to the parents and just said, look at this. We can't do anything if half the kids don't even know what we're doing. And they were really good after that. And I don't think they were even aware that it was that important. And then, you know, we did really, really well after that and basically lost the city final in a game we dominated. So, yeah, it took the parents a while to get used to that. They had to do that, and it really changed this year. Like this year, last year we had half ice practices most of the time, and just one goalie. So if that goalie was missing, it was really tough. And our goalie went on a 2-week vacation the first 2 weeks of the season, or 1 week, right in the middle of school. So that's something different nowadays. But they did get used to it. This year they were full ice practices more, you know, it was a bigger commitment. And, you know, as far as you saw it a lot more in me, but I think they did pretty well with it.
Hey, Wally, can I ask Hal a question?
Sure. Hal's not on now.
Oh, okay. What I was going to ask you is, you know, I've heard such wonderful things about the Minnesota program.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the big factors I see is, you know, when over recruiting happens, what happens is, you know, underplaying kids that have good skills, because there's not enough time to get them all on the ice.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a factor in a lot of junior teams, and and even the U18 teams, which, you know, where recruiting is becoming a main factor. But I was talking to a fella in the Minnesota high schools, and I'm not sure what caliber that is, but you know, they have I think it's 150 high school teams in Minnesota, and they have a rec league, and I'm not sure how it works, but you know, they have so many programs, and they're well thought out, and the participation. So, you know, one of my little pet peeves is, you know, to be a defenseman today, you know, you get less ice time unless you're, you know, the guy on the point playing the power play.
Yeah.
And yet this fella said, well, in Minnesota, you know, instead of having 20, you know, they say take the U18, instead of having 20 defensemen who get all the ice time on the power play in the league, they got 150 high school teams.
Yeah.
And
I went to college in Minnesota, so I saw that.
And is it a pretty elaborate group of, like, because I hear high school hockey in Minnesota is phenomenal. Is that correct?
Well, that's what kids grow up wanting to play for their high school, eh? So there's different levels too. You know, like there's a tier 1 and tier 2 and all this kind of stuff, different tiers of hockey, depending on the size of the towns and all this. But they have the high school tournament, and they fill that where the Wild play. They fill that stadium in the middle of the afternoon. I remember when I was going to Bemidji was playing somebody, and Bemidji had Gary Sargent, who played for the North Stars for a long time. And they were playing someone at 1 p.m. on a Thursday, and there's 15,000 people at the game in Minneapolis. So it's absolutely huge. And, you know, and that guy, Middlestad or whatever, he was a big high school star, just got traded. So there's kids get drafted right out of that league sometimes, and they really feed. And a lot of kids also play for, they work it around somehow. Their season isn't as long, that they play club. I don't know, Hal would have to explain how that works. The club hockey too, but you know, they have all those summer leagues and all that. But the high school hockey is incredible. And Hal said a thing about War Road, because they developed, there's only 2,500 people in the town.
Yeah.
And the kids there can go skating 24 hours a day. You want to go at 2 a.m, you can get your buddies and play. They leave the arena open the whole time. I don't know exactly how they work it, but they produce hockey players up the wing wang. And Roseau's just 10 miles away, and they do the same thing. And they probably have more NHLers per person than anywhere. Like Bufflin's from War Road, I think it is. And lots of guys. So it's quite the deal of Minnesota hockey, the high school hockey.
I wanted to mention something about Minnesota hockey that I observed, Carey. Years ago, I was working with the Oval team. We were playing in a league. We played the American team in Minnesota. We had a road trip there, and during the U.S. team girls, it was a club team. They were putting on a clinic with about 100 kids on the ice, and I watched that. And that was before the game we were going to play them. And then I'm upstairs in a large open space. In comes a bunch of what I would call, maybe 12, 13-year-old kids. They were boys, but they did some dryland stuff with the coach, who I'm sure was an educator, and they did stuff with ball handling that I've never seen before. So when you talk about high school hockey, you're a full-time teacher, you're a full-time coach, and it's part of your job that you're probably paid a little extra for to coach sports in school in the States. I don't think we do that in Canada.
Hey, Tom, how many people would be in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota?
Geez, I don't know. I think the Twin Cities has about 3 million. I'm guessing.
Is it similar to Alberta? Like, we're at 5 million.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt if it was similar, because outside of those two places, the places aren't that big. They're kind of like Lethbridge size and all this that I can think of, because I think the majority of the people live right in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then there's all kinds of.
And Gary, I Googled it, 5.7.
Yeah, I did too.
Similar, well, and Alberta's getting to be 5 million, so.
Yeah, it's not that much dissimilar.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting stuff. Rick, I was going to ask, is Rick still on?
Rick's still on, yep.
So, Rick, in the model that you have going down in Vulcan, now, one of the questions I have is, so the age of your kids, what age are they? Are they 17 to 20, or what is there an allotment for 21-year-olds, or is that a different league?
No, this league allows 21-year-olds. There's a cap on it, but that cap is 15. So you can have a team that's overloaded with older, stronger, and more experienced players. The two top teams in the league this year did that. They maxed out at their 15. We didn't have any 21-year-olds. Again, they did that, in my opinion, because that was their path to winning, and they were quite open about it. They didn't try to couch it at all. My counter to that is, where's the development for these players? The players that they had at the top end had aged out at AJ level or SJ or MJ in a lot of the cases there with these teams. I'd prefer to have the younger players that have an upside that can grow from there.
Well, interesting. Another thing that's just happened here recently, and I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but Beaumark and the Okotoks Oilers have taken a major jump into what I would call an interesting model. And it'll be interesting to see how it works. They've hired a full-time U18 hockey coach, and part of his role is going to be the development of the coach's curriculum for all of the teams, as well as creating a guiding wheel. Much kind of what I think you when you mentor, you try to do. So the fellow they hired is Mark Peterson, and it'll be interesting to watch how it works in the realms of the quadrant hockey program. because it'll all come down to, in my opinion, all come down to how good he is at working with other coaches, as well as leading what I would call an association culture, and whether that's the behavioral part of the hockey or the tactical part, but that just happened a week ago, and so it'll be interesting to watch how it affects the Beaumark Oilers.
Now, is that just at the U18 level, Carey, or does it trickle down to the U15s, U16s, or whatever?
Well, he'll be responsible for helping guide all of the different levels
in the Okotoks AA, AAA organization.
Yeah,
okay.
Men's and also the women's, because it's a little different because they have the boys and the girls together. So that's 6 teams, I would imagine, is it not?
I would think. Don't know for a fact either way.
Yeah, and so, and of course, a lot of their kids, they have a daytime program. A lot of their kids are coming from, they actually billet there from Chestermere, and all around that area there too. So, it'll be interesting to watch because, they were having lots of trouble the last couple of years keeping some of their top players from heading to all the sports schools.
Yeah.
And I believe, Wally, that, the number one reason people leave to go to sports schools is they in their minds, they don't think that their kids are going to get proper coaching in the quadrant program, in boys anyways.
Yeah.
And, and it's so the model, or what they're trying to do is, and Mark is a former, like he's a 2-time Royal Cup winner. He's coached in like basically been coaching pro for the last 12 years. And he was a first-round draft pick of Montreal Canadiens. And, as a coach, it'll all come down to his, in my mind, the ethics of how he operates.
Well, Carey, my question is, and I know Mark personally, is playing at a high level is a lot different than coaching at a low level. And I think his knowledge of the game and his ethical background will guide him well. That's the biggest problem of all. There's what I call technical coaching and ethical coaching.
Yeah.
And the combination of the two is the art of coaching the right way. Technical coaching only, without the ethics of development and managing the bench to create a team. If you don't have that, then you're not really developing. You're just coaching to win. You're not sticking to a process of growth and development. And you will more likely win doing that, as you know and Rick knows, because we've done it for years. It's just something that parents don't realize. And when you talk about the sports schools, I think there's an exodus of a number of players from the U15 girls GHC league, 3 or 4, maybe 5, that are choosing to go to sports schools. And I know that 3 or 4 of them, they need a year of midget AA, U18 AA. They're not ready for the AAA team, but because they didn't get invited and promised a spot, that's where they're going. And some of them are going to find it more difficult to get ice time on the prep school teams, because some of them are pretty darn good, and some of them are one line and 2 line teams anyway. So they're creating a little bit of a monster. They're going there expecting to play a higher level of hockey where they might not develop. And I know if they stayed and play U18 AA, the quality of coaching and development, staying home, would get them to the AAA level the next year?
Always remember the 4 C's, eh? You know, equal competition, you know, convenience, cost efficiency, and just run it with common sense. And Wally, I'm seeing more and more people who make that decision and regretting it because of what exactly you just said, the fight for ice time. And, you know, I see it all the time, you know, and you know, we're not going to resurrect it one way or another way because it is really difficult to get the communication or a parent to sometimes have the common sense to say, you know, my daughter or my son is just, let's have them develop at the age where he can play.
Yeah.
You got to play, Wally.
Yeah. Carey, I'm going to ask you to tell the story I've heard many times. When you were coaching midget AAA, you had to convince a parent to let the kid play AA midget. And you did. And he went out in the NHL for quite a long time when he finally physically matured. But what was the player's name?
Jay Beagle.
Jay Beagle. Can you tell the story for the listeners? Because this is true in girls hockey. If they don't accelerate to the next level, they're upset. They move, they change, they travel, and the parents say they can afford it. But just share the Jay Beagle story because it is one that is so true when they're bringing 15-year-olds up in U18 hockey. And I know in your organization they did that last year with your son Riley, and they just didn't get a chance to develop. So the Jay Beagle story, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Jay was a kid who was in the North Star program, and number one, Jay he was a little bit of a late bloomer, both maturity wise and size wise, and so he came to the North Stars in his first year, and he had grown up.
Oops, just lost him.
We lost you, Carey. You're muted, Wally.
Okay, can you start over again? I accidentally muted. Sorry. Start from the beginning. Okay.
So the young guy I'm going to talk about is Jay Beagle, and so Jay he grew up playing in a minor hockey system with you know, Mike Green, who was always a very mature, almost like a man child, and Ryan Stone, both very good hockey players. And so Jay grew up playing novice and Adam and Pee Wee with those kids, and they had very successful teams. When he got to Bantam AAA, you know, Jay wasn't as big as everybody, and but still decent. But his work ethic was undauntingly. He just was a relentless worker. So he comes out to try with the North Star team, and I'm watching him, and it's his first year, and he's only, you know, I shouldn't say only, but he's 5'9", and you know, decent size, but not huge. And I just keep watching him, and
we keep going, Carey. You're fading out on us.
Oh, so
you said watching him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
And so he basically, you know, I think he could have played on our team as a fourth liner. And to me, because the fourth liner gets to play a lot. You know, my bigger concern was that in some of the things that he needed to get better at was, you know, puck control and dominating and scoring and being, you know, knowing it's like to be a top 10 scorer versus being a struggling player. And so I sat with him and his dad, and, you know, I explained to him, you know, 2 different routes. And at the time, you know, I released him and I said, you know, this is what you need to do. And which is just take this by the bull and and go and play and score and be a part of the offense more so, because he was always a great penalty killer and always great all those sorts of things. So he did. He played midget AA in his first year as a 16-year-old, and I guess now he can play at 15, but he was 16, and so he ended up in the top 10 of scoring in midget AA. And I brought him up a couple of times, and he played. Then the next year, at 17, he comes, and he grew a couple inches, so now he's about 5'11", with relentless work. He becomes our number one center on the team we won the national championship with. But he not only got the penalty kill till he was blue in the face, he got to be on the power play. And he actually, is a kind of a more of an energy sort of player, getting the opportunity. I think he had 44 points in 36 games as a 17-year-old. And just was a tremendous guy on our team. At 18, and Jay goes and tries out for the Hitmen, and he gets cut. And so he went back and played for the Junior Royals at that time. He played 2 years there. And in that 2 years, he grew another couple inches and became 6'1". And so he garnered a U.S. scholarship up to Anchorage, and he went up there at, I think, 20 and 21. And now, all of a sudden, in those years, he grew to be 6'4". So very unusual, but it happened. So you have a relentless worker, good attitude, and he decides he doesn't really like the school part, and he says to his dad, can you find me a team? I wouldn't mind trying to play pro. So he's 6'4". He loves hockey, relentless worker, great listener. So his dad finds and gets him a tryout in the Idaho Steelhawks in the East Coast League. And he walks on, and he makes the team, I think it was at 22, and they win the Kelly Cup. From there, the guys from Hershey recognized him, and they put him on their team the next 2 years, and they won the Calder Cup 2 years in a row. Whereupon, so now he's 24, 25, and that's when Washington signed him to his first contract, and he went on to win the Stanley Cup. So he's, here's a guy who kind of came through the system in Calgary, behind, a lot of players. Mike Green and him ended up winning a Stanley Cup together, ironically. Mike out of the Simons Valley neck of the woods. But I always use Jay as an example of, he persevered through a lot of it. He didn't grow until he was, a lot older. And he's the only guy in the history of hockey to win an Air Canada Cup, a Kelly Cup, 2 Calder Cups, and a Stanley Cup. And now he's a part of the AJHL program. I think he's a part owner of it, and he's still involved in hockey. It'll be interesting to see how that affects his view and what he wants to do with the game. But he's got young kids coming through the system now, and that's the story of Jay Beagle. Where he playing where you can dominate and just get better at a certain. I call it confidence too.
Yeah.
Gaining the confidence to play at certain ages and enjoying it. And I think that's the biggest part of what the people don't realize is that struggling is not fun.
Yeah.
And it could be just one age bracket.
Yeah.
And personally, I learned a lot about it myself, because Wally, as you would know, my older brother was a guy who could play at any level, at any age. I was a lot different of a player. I was smaller, and I didn't play AAA my first year, even though I thought it was good enough. But that year taught me a lot in what I would call gaining confidence to play in the AA league, and I've used it as a tail my whole life, but I've also used it as from an experience standpoint to help educate people that dominating and being confident, at a young age is far better than struggling and not getting to play.
Yeah, I'd like to chip in here too.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, a guy I play hockey with all the time, Mike Schumi, he coached McCarr, and McCarr he played double A Bantam his first year, then triple A. Then he played minor midget, and then he played the triple A, then he went to Brooks. So he didn't jump right, first year when he's 15-year-old, he wasn't playing triple A midget. And it certainly didn't help him or hurt him because he may be the best D in the world.
Yeah. And, there's another guy named Brian McCabe. He was another one that the organization actually wouldn't let him play AAA at 15, and he played, Bantam. He never did get the opportunity to play midget AAA because he just went straight to junior. But, it never hurts anybody to dominate and grow confidence, at the levels they should play at.
Carey, and I wanted all of you, I wanted to bring the female into this. Tom, you had U15s there. I don't know if any of them have been guaranteed a spot on the AAA team, but I know on a few of the teams, some players have been committed to AAA teams. And if some of them weren't, they're the ones that aren't going to stay and play AA when it's best for them to stay and play AA because they're going to change, leave home, play for a prep school.
And so how old are they, Wally? Like they 13, 14-year-old girls?
No.
They're 10.
They're turning 16.
No.
Now, these
girls... they're
girls...
turning 15.
Yeah, turning 15. Go ahead. Explain that, Tom. They're 15.
Well, they're the minor midget age.
Yeah.
But there is no minor midget in the girls. So, and there's a huge, unless you're really good, you shouldn't be in the AAA because the girls are a couple of years older than you, just like in the boys hockey, right, Carey?
Yeah.
A grade 12 and a grade 10 is a big difference. I know my grandson was one of the only two in the Royals AAA his first year, and I wish he would have played the minor midget. And he had that bad thing. He just about had his bicep cut off by a skate, but
it's interesting too.
Better be a star, I think.
That's one of the biggest factors that needs to be used as a tool. Like, I look at the Alberta Junior Hockey League or any junior league. Like, I look at the 17-year-olds and, should they be playing? And, what is the criteria for them to play? And it's the same criteria for that 15-year-old girl playing U18 as it is the 17-year-old playing junior. Why would you risk injury? And, I watched the Alberta Junior Hockey League. Drumheller's 17-year-old, hurt at Christmas, never finished the year. And actually, the DuPont, right, Wally? Is everyone know Landon DuPont or Mickey DuPont?
Oh, yes.
So his oldest son is a good hockey player, Nolan. And, he, as a 17-year-old, he was in Black Falls. And this year, he got hurt. And so he hasn't played very much. And, and I watched him in the Royals organization. He was always a decent player. But if you're going to, and I went through this with you, Wally, when I was 17 playing for you, it is physically tough to play against 19 and 20-year-olds. And unless you're a gorilla at 17, but even if you are, you're not as strong as those 19 and 20-year-olds. And the same thing goes, with the girls. Like to have a 3-year age bracket, I think the hockey world is, they weren't really thinking when they did that.
Well, they knocked out juvenile, right? So they created that big space. Because there's 3 years of midget and 3 years of junior now.
Yeah, but you really should only play 3 years or 2 years at any level. But
yeah,
they created midget AAA so the kids could stay in high school and the 16 and 17-year-olds would mix, right? And that was one of the ages of the juvenile, right? Because the juvenile used to be 17 and 18.
Yeah.
And, but a 17-year-old versus a 20-year-old, even in juvenile versus junior B in the city, there's a huge difference, eh? But
Carey, I just want to. You mentioned 17 to 20-year-olds or 21. Rick, do you have any young players on your team where there's physically quite a visible difference?
Yes.
Can you comment on that and your ability to manage them and bring them along so they don't get injured and they still do develop and gain confidence?
My hesitation tells you I probably don't have a ready answer for that, Wally. They survived as best they can. A lot of them, the ones that I had this year, were physically intimidated, so you had to ease them into it. We did a lot of stuff in practice to try and get them more comfortable with the physical aspect of the game and how to deal with it on both sides, how to take a check, how to protect themselves when they're being ridden out, things of that nature. But there's no easy way to get around it. You've got a 17-year-old that's 5'6" and 150, 60 pounds against a 20-year-old who's 6 foot whatever and over 200. I dealt with that all through my hockey playing because I'm one of the smaller guys. Again, it's for me, it's part of learning how committed are you to the game and how badly do you want to do this, which weeds out a lot of players along the way, not only on the physical side of things, but just on the work, on the commitment factor, on how much effort, how much energy they have to spend to become a quality hockey player and a recognized hockey player, if you want to put a tag on it as going to the NHL or at least playing pro hockey for a number of years. There's a lot of really skilled hockey players around that don't have very many of the other ingredients, and so they're playing beer league hockey now. And some lesser skilled players that have a lot of commitment and a lot of energy and a lot of willingness to put up with a lot of things physically and emotionally, and sacrifice different aspects of their lives to fulfill that objective on their part. They're the ones that become successful. I've always tried to graduate the commitment factor as I work through the age levels with kids, Pee-wee through Bantam and Midget, to make it increasingly more committed so that they would get a feel for what it was that they were aspiring to be. And from that, make an intelligent decision that they want to pursue this or they don't.
Carey, can you expound on that?
I think the harsh reality of it is, depending on, different organizations, different philosophies, and is anyone more right than the other? What I do know is that on the boys' side, 0.05% ever go on to make a paycheck, and they're going to go on no matter what. I think over the years, organizations and the governments of hockey have tried to find a vehicle for them to all grow, whatever level of ability you have. And it just seems that every time they try and make something better, going to midget AAA 16 and 17 was better, but then all of a sudden the 15-year-old who was a superstar, and there wasn't many of them. The rule was pretty simple. If you could play and play regularly and physically handle it, then you should play. And if you dominated, then you deserve to play. But now I see the rules and all of this sort of stuff just keep sliding, and we're going backwards to 3 and 4 age brackets when it's not really necessary. There's plenty of hockey at every level, And and I'm speaking more so on the boys. I mean, the boys hockey has really become, oh boy, complex. And I just don't like seeing kids not have a good experience. And being injured is one of them. And if you're playing against guys that are 3 and 4 years older, you're more likely to get hurt, Rick. That's just how simple it is.
No question.
And it's not an easy thing, but I watched it. I watched it in the AJ. I listen to the coaches. Well, if I don't get him at 17, he's not going to be around to be a.
Yeah, it's similar to Rick's situation. He's got one that young, and he'd like to keep him and come back next year and watch him grow in the program. But boy, he might have developed enough this year to make a team at a higher level. It's a risk you take, but it's a risk for the player starting too young to not develop. Carey, back in the day when you were 17 and we won the national junior or the junior A championship provincials, how many 17-year-olds did we have on that team?
Well, and that was a pretty unusual group, Wally, because there was Mulvena, Hayes, Bracko, Giffen, Bowman, and Ross McGowan, Terry Knight, Rob Height. There was half the team that year was 17, and the other half was 20. And we had just a couple 18-year-olds and a couple. Well, I think Michelenko was the only 19-year-old, and Mansfield. They were 18.
Yeah.
Half the team was 20 and half the team was 17, and a sprinkling of 18 and 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
But that was an unusual. And back then, there wasn't a 20-year-old minimum or maximum.
Yeah.
That we might have had eight or 10 20-year-olds, but it's interesting because off of that, I don't know if you knew this, Wally, but Roger Mulvena went on to be a captain in the Western Hockey League. Kent Hayes went on to be a captain in the Western Hockey League. Bob Giffen went on to a really good career in the Ottawa 76 or 67s. So, you're talking a group of 17-year-olds that were, pretty good.
Yeah.
And so, and it was a bit of a survival test at times, but because, the 20-year-olds of that day and age and 19-year-olds, they were tough human beings. And physically strong, but yeah, there was a lot of 17-year-olds on that team. Now, and just to give you another little side, so when I was 20, the team we won the AJ with, there was only 3 20-year-olds. Jamie Bowman, Roger Mulvena, and myself. And we had a really young team. And we won. But, every year it can be a little different, and the kids are all different. But I do know that a lot of the younger kids that played the year when I was 20, injuries that happened to our 16 and 17-year-olds. That they had to, get through and kind of hindered them from. And midget AAA was only 15, 16.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other big. All those, that played. We were graduated midgets by that stage.
Well, Tom,
when I played junior, I played like pre-Canucks, just like Phelps, he was called the Cowboys. And we were all 18, 19, 20. I remember Mike Christie, he was on the juvenile team, and I think they won some big championship that year. And he played a few games for us, and I kept thinking, why don't we have this guy playing on our team? Because he had a really good NHL career after that, eh? And but he got recruited Randy Murray, or not Randy Murray, but anyway, Randy playing in Denver, saw him playing juvenile and told the coach in Denver, you got to bring this guy in. So sight unseen, he gave him a scholarship to Denver. Randy Ward. And
yeah, it was probably Randy Ward.
Yeah, it was Randy Ward. He played at Denver.
But I will tell you that 17-year-old year I played, I mean, I the physicality of the way I played, I was kind of held together with harnesses, and I got banged up as a 17-year-old, and it was relentless. Like it was, and I guess and I was a small guy. Like, well, I wasn't very big at 17, that's for sure.
Well, you were pretty tough. I'm going to share this story. It's a humorous one about Carey. Carey, I think your shoulder was dislocated, and you had sort of had to wear some kind of a brace.
Yeah, you could tie my shoulder in.
Yeah. But we went to Red Deer to play, their junior A team, and they had a tough guy. And you were sort of one of our more physical guys, but you dressed only to serve penalties. And their tough guy, he was at liberty, taking liberties with our players, just running them all over the place. And I remember you coming over to me and saying, let me go out there. Let me go out there. I said, no, you're just going to serve penalties. You've got a bad arm. And of course, we do get a penalty, and he has to serve it. It's a bench penalty. But when he came out, of course, what does he do? This guy's on the ice, and he sets two with him, and he didn't lose, but he managed to tie him up and stand up to him. And we turned the game around, and we did win that game. But that's the intangible of mental toughness, physical toughness, even at your young age. And I forgot about the shoulder injury and how it happened, but I know how you responded and recovered, and you never changed the way you played in your mind. So kudos to you on that particular day. And I think one of the reasons that Riley and the Canucks have won, today is a kid like Riley is, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and you know how he plays physically. And he's pretty well put together like yourself. So,
well, it's funny when you're sitting in the stands and you're a dad and you're a coach, and you're a dad and you're a coach. And Rick, I'm sure you went through this. You're cheering on your kid and stuff, and there's all these sorts of things you think that the team should do more and da 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 da. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I got such a high out of the last 3 games because I went up to Whitecourt. And the first 2 games were there, and I was there early in the second game. And one of the kids that was playing on Riley's line and had been struggling a bit, and I noticed it, and they just a couple little things, and so I was at the game like an hour in advance because I had to get tickets and stuff, and didn't want to not get tickets. So, and we just happened to bump into each other. And, he looked like, disdained. Like he looked like he was just fighting in his own mind. How do I get out of this slump? How do I do this? How do I do that? And so I just looked at him and I said, you're going to be all right here, buddy. And I got this favorite line I like to say to guys in the offensive zone. I call them the 5 Gs. And it's, give the puck to somebody, go to the net, get it back, and you'll get a goal. And I call him the 5 Gs. And so he looked at me, because I just said to him, I said, work with your line mates and find open space and just relax. And I said, I just said, you're very good at finding open space. You got the puck. So he goes out, and their line, and he got 2 points that game. So he was higher than a kite in game game 2 because he kind of broke the slump. So game 3, I was at the Carey Bracko rink, and so he comes over to me again, and superstitiously he says, "What's today? What are you going to tell me today?" And so this was game 3, and I just said to him, I gave him a couple little things to help him. So he goes out and gets 2 more points again. And so last night, it's the 4th game, and I'm sitting in, and I didn't get there quite early enough. All of a sudden, my phone rings, Wally. And it's my daughter who's doing her practicum with the Canucks and doing a lot of organizing of the games. And she says, "Kiz is on the line. He needs to talk to you." And this is the kid before the warm-up. So his name's Cody Pisarchuk. So he says, "What's the word today? What's the word today?" And what had happened in the 3rd game was that, he had 4 golden opportunities and he just didn't snipe them. And all I said to him was, just don't think, just shoot the damn puck. And so they won 3-2 and he had 2 points. And so he's on this, it felt good to be able to, alleviate the stresses. Because I think sometimes these kids get so up and whatnot. But so it was 3 games in a row, 3 little talks just by accident. And you know what? He's a happy young man today. Yeah. So, that's what coach is all about, eh, Tom? Rick, if you can find just one little thing that alleviates or helps someone do something that they can achieve, makes you feel good, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Carey, when you talked about the 5 Gs, I thought that was brilliant. I think every player, if you can give him a couple of things to think about that will make a difference in your mind, he'll go out and do it.
Yeah.
Your mind controls your feelings and your performance state. And that's what you did. So I'm going to ask you to repeat the 5 Gs, because to me, that's brilliant. 5 Gs. Go ahead again. And I think all of the coaches out there, boy, that's something added to your toolbox. Go ahead on that one, Carey.
Give the puck and go. Get it back. Go to the net. Get a goal. And it comes from the give and go that we always talked about.
Yeah.
And I added the other ones. Give, go, get it back, go to the net, get a goal.
Okay. Makes real sense. And,
the other one that, is really becoming more prevalent for me is, especially in the offensive end, is open ice. A lot of the tight turning to get away from, the defender is happening, which is good. It's fun to watch, and once you do find open ice, attack. Like, don't just keep finding open ice. Like, sometimes it's kind of fun to watch, but if you find open ice, then attack. Go to the net. But that's part of overwatching the game, I guess.
Well, you talk about finding open ice. I talk about creating it.
Yeah, I guess.
An evasive tight turn, you're going to have space and time. And what I find at the female hockey this year that I've watched, nobody uses a tight turn. They can't tight turn both ways with the puck and accelerate to gain space. And the few that do on their backhand side pretty well, they don't get their eyes up to read the ice, to take the space, or to see people that are being open. And that to me is the most missing aspect of our minor hockey game today, the ability to create space and time with evasive tactical skating tactics, with puck control, and get the eyes up to think and see and make the right play, take the lane, go in to score, or make the pass, give and go, get back in the situation, support it. But all good coaching points. So, Rick, anything to add to the sort of your imagery and words? And Tom, as you coach, have you got any little visual kind of words or phrases that you use that have worked for you coaching the game?
Nothing to the magnitude that Carey's. I like what Carey said there. I actually made a note on it. One of the things I've often told players is about mistakes when they're trying to play too cautious and afraid to make a mistake. I tell them that if you're not making any, you're just not trying hard enough. You've got to be comfortable with a risk-reward scenario. Don't make the same ones over again, but don't be afraid to experiment in the right situations.
It's a good one. Go play. Yeah.
Exactly. The game is so full of variables that you couldn't possibly cover them all and all the contingencies. So get out there and deal with what happens.
Well, there's no sport that moves faster than hockey.
Agreed.
And you listen to football players or basketball players while they down in the States when they like say someone like Charles Barkley. After watching his first hockey game, he was amazed. He's going, these guys are athletic, they're big, they're on skates, they have a stick, and they're fast. He goes, what kind of sport is that? But it's true. Like, I mean, it is a
Yeah, there's no doubt about it being the most demanding sport of all sports, personally, as a player, and then being able to think quick. And Tom, the quote of Tarasov, more important than the speed of foot and speed of hand is the speed of mind.
Speed of mind.
Yeah. And Tom, I'm curious if you have any things in your back pocket, words or phrases that you use to get kids and teams to focus.
I know I'm saying stuff to kids like that all the time, but my mind's going blank. One thing I do is I have them repeat after me. Shoot where the goalie's coming from, not where they're going. And but right now I've gone blank on a few things because we had a Halloween game at St. there, and one team in the Halloween, they had these white jerseys on, and they all wrote my sayings on the front of their jerseys. So, but small things. I talk about the war zone a lot too. You got to win the war zone, dominate the war zone, area in front of the net. That's a George Hill kind of a thing.
Yeah. One of the things I learned from a U15 coach of this year, coaching U15, I watched them practice and their jerseys were all mixed up and they were playing a little bit of a game, small area game, but I couldn't tell who was on which team. And she was standing by the bench that I was watching from, and I said, who's on what team here? And she said, well, we put colored tape on their helmets. The tape colors are their teammates, so they have to get their head up.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing little trick, and she admitted she borrowed it from the Global fellow who created Global. That was one of the things he brought to the table. But it's a great idea, like getting the head up and looking at their heads, which means eye contact. You're going to pass to people. You have to have eye contact. Freddie Sherrill, back in the day, he had 13 cardinal sins of hockey. And I printed that sheet off, and I used to give it to the pros. And Carey, you probably got the sheet when you were skating with them. I always brought kids up that could handle skating with the pros. And that sheet, I've sent it out, maybe 6 years ago to see how much of it is valid. And I know you're not supposed to say never, but it's one of those never do this, never do that. It's a cardinal. And it's something that resonated with me that Freddie Sherrill used, and he won a few championships with his, I call it imagery of coaching. He's the guy who used to put, statements or quotes on the wall in the room.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. So, guys, I just edited a video last night of Yogi Berra. It's a documentary. The guy is a genius. And all of his quotes, as funny as they seem, in this documentary, there's a quote by Albert Einstein. And then at the same time, a little bit later, is a quote by Yogi Berra. And they're saying the same thing.
That's awesome.
And there's Robert Frost, Winston Churchill quotes, other Stephen Hawking's quote, and then a quote by Yogi Berra saying the same thing, meaning the same thing as Stephen Hawking's. So I've edited that video and put it together. It's the story of his life. He was not only probably one of the winningest players and winningest coaches. It's a great special. If you ever can find it on Netflix, I recommend it. But when I watch it, I edited parts out and I put together in a video, and I'm going to share that with everybody that's on here today and the Sharks audience. And you may need a speaker and turn the volume up a bit, but I've got the quotes in at the beginning, at the end, and I've got his daughter or his sons talking about him and his career, and there's background footage. President Obama is talking, and then another USA president is talking when he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroism, and the presidents talk about him as a character and having his sense of humor and his ability to use the English language in a way where you were left scratching your head. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it's a good thing to bring up at the time because Yogi was a player's coach. The players loved him. In that episode, he got hired and fired by Steinbrenner of the Yankees, and boy, it was not a good thing. But eventually, Steinbrenner many years later apologized to him, and they did become friends again. And he did return to Yankee Stadium to be recognized for everything he had ever done. So
it's a tremendous documentary. Like it's awesome.
Yeah. Have you seen it, Carey?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
There's one other one just before I forgot. This one just came up the other day with all the individuality happening and a way to help youth. There's a phrase that got brought up, and I don't even know where it got brought up. This hockey mind was talking about, heading up the ice and using the word. He just used the word scanning the ice to get your head up. But he just called it scan everywhere you're at, all the time. And I thought that was maybe that's a new way of getting through. We used to just say head up. Headman the puck.
Yeah, 6 months ago, Sammy Jo Small used the term scanning with her U9 team and her U11 team. She used the word scanning, getting them to scan. In other words, see. Head up doesn't mean you're seeing. And the idea, vision and seeing and visualizing and seeing everything and making decisions based on what you see, that's the essence of hockey sense. And Gretzky had it, and I think all kids have it if we let them see and let them think and let them make their own decisions. And Carey, it's quite simple. That means let them play.
Yep. Well, you gotta go.
Okay, guys, it's just about time for me to go and take my taxes and turn them in. So I'm going to shut off the record now. Thanks very much.